north, and then we'll see this next area of low pressure bring a spell of wet and windy weather for Sunday. So a coldish day on Saturday, outbreaks of rain, some snow over northern areas for a while, then it's much milder, wetter and windier for part 2 of the weekend. That's it. Take care, Sophie.
Stav, thank you very much. And that's it from the BBC News at 6. The news, of course, continues here on BBC One. It's time to join our colleagues across the nations and regions for the news where you are. Goodbye.
Sophie, thank you. Welcome to BBC London. Coming up, London's childcare costs are the highest in the country. We look at the impact on parents in the capital.
We are being punished for the fact that we chose to procreate, I just don't see what the government expects people to do.
The government says it spent more than £20 billion over the past 5 years to support families. Also on the programme tonight, what's being done to tackle gangs grooming children to carry drugs around the country? The Met makes 200 arrests. The Londoner chosen to represent the UK at this year's Eurovision. And after more than 30 years, why the country's only Sylvanian Families store is about to shut up shop in North London. Good evening and welcome to the programme. The cost of childcare is soaring in the capital, with an average full-time nursery place in London for a child under 2 now costing nearly £19,000 a year. Parents here face the highest bills in the country, and it's becoming more and more difficult to find provision. Some say it's now so expensive to have their children looked after, they're being forced out of work. Well, let's get more on this now from Alpa Patel. Alpa.
Thanks very much, Luxmy. Well, the crippling cost of childcare is bad nationally, but here in London, it's even worse. Let's take a look at nurseries, for example, and yes, it's costing parents whose children are in full-time nursery care, who are under the age of 2, £394 per week. That's an increase of 62% to other parts of the country. And this is all having a massive effect on families. So the cost of childcare is actually £19,000 per year. Now, all of this is having an impact on families, and it's making it's causing a huge in terms of childminders, for instance, £355 per week, and I'm just waiting for the next figure to come on, 60% higher than in other parts of the country. So childcare is really, really expensive everywhere across the country, and that means that is across all age groups. I've been speaking to some mums about their experiences.
My name's Lorenza Stewart-Young. I have 4 children. I pay around £3,000 a month in childcare. We worked out the other day, it's about 62% of my income. I don't sleep very much as it is, but I've been thinking about it a lot at night, and I've been getting more and more sort of anxious about it.
My name is Rebecca and I have 3 kids. At the moment, I cannot afford to send them all to nursery, so I've had to sort of compromise. And at this point, I'm faced with either quitting my job and just staying at home, or picking up a second job, which will have to be nights because I already work a full-time 9-to-5 job, just to be able to cover the cost. It feels like maybe it's my fault now. Maybe I shouldn't have had children, or we are being punished for the fact that we chose to procreate, I just don't see what the government expects people to do. Is it only people who earn a certain income that can afford to have children? I guess you can clearly see how it's already starting to divide society and is now having an impact on people. And I just don't think it's fair.
Some very moving stories there. So childcare is expensive, but it's also becoming harder to find. National Day Nurseries Association found in its report out today that there's been an 87% rise in the number of nurseries closing down. That was between April and December of last year compared to the year before. The largest numbers of closures are happening in deprived areas. We visited this nursery in Golders Green to hear about their challenges.
So the last 3 months, we've actually not broken even, and this is before we've increased our salaries following minimum wage. So the company, because we're having to pay so much in keeping up with the regulatory requirements and the business rates and the underfunding, all that has culminated in us not breaking even for the last 3 months. We need the government to recognise the childcare sector as a vital resource in the economy, and for that we need relief on business rates like Scotland and Wales have, because business rates are absolutely brutal to our monthly expenses, on top of already rising costs of food and electricity and minimum wage increases. So, you know, the government needs to recognise this sector for what it is and give us the relief and support that we need. Otherwise, you'll see more and more nurseries close down and an entire workforce with nowhere to go.
Well, there are big fears for nurseries from April who are facing rising in bills and business rates and staff costs. The government says we recognise that families and early years providers across the country are facing financial pressures. That's why we have spent more than £20 billion over the past 5 years to support families with the cost of childcare. Well, the OECD has found that the UK has the third highest childcare, there it is, of anywhere in the world. The campaign group Pregnant Then Screwed say the crippling cost of childcare means people are getting themselves into debt, delaying having more children, are unable to get a mortgage, and women are leaving their jobs as a result. They and many others are calling on the government to act urgently. Back to you, Luxmy.
Alpa, thank you. Well, Jolie Brearley, who is the founder of Pregnant Then Screwed, joins me now. Thank you for being with us, Jolie. So we've heard there what some of the issues are, but what needs to be done about it? What do you think needs to happen?
In the spring budget, we want to see an investment from the government of £1.75 billion to bridge the funding gap between what the government gives to the childcare sector and what it actually costs to deliver those places. We know from the Early Years Alliance that the subsidies are underfunded by almost £4 per child per hour. So the first thing we need to do is fix that funding gap. We also need to get rid of business rates, and we need to do more on universal credit.
And what the government has said, Jolie, is that they've spent £20 billion in the past 5 years to help, and that childcare places that are available have stayed roughly the same since 2015.
As a percentage of GDP, we invest very little in childcare compared to other countries. So although it sounds like a large sum of money compared to other countries, it really isn't a huge amount at all. But also these subsidies are very expensive to administer. There are 8 different schemes out there. So we need to really have a long-term strategy, a long-term solution from this government that works and is a proper investment.
And given how much more expensive we are than most of the rest of the world, what is it that they seem to be doing right that we could be doing?
I mean, the key thing is investment, but it's also streamlining the process. We have 70% of our providers are for profit. In other countries, such as Canada, the majority of providers are not for profit. If you look at what Canada has just done, they've just invested $30 billion in their childcare sector to create a system that costs no more than $10 a day. And they did that because they found that for every dollar they invested in childcare, they got between $1.50 and $2.80 back into the wider economy.
Well, thank you so much, Jolie. I know there's a lot more we could talk about this, but thank you for speaking to us there. Jolie Brearley is the founder of Pregnant Then Screwed. And we'll continue to cover the issue of childcare in the capital. Do get in touch with your stories on this. You can email us at hellobbclondon@bbc.co.uk. Next tonight, police say the cost of living crisis could put more young people at risk of being groomed by drug dealers who offer cash and gifts to lure them in. In the past week, the Met says it's closed down more than 70 networks known as county lines. Now, that's where criminals often use children to carry drugs around the UK. And it's often only when those teenagers go missing that families realise they're at risk. Here's our Home Affairs correspondent, Sonia Jessup.
Early morning in Barking, police targeting suspected county line drug gangs.